From VOA Learning English, this is the Help Report. Researchers want new efforts to stop polio in countries where the disease never seems to disappear. They made the appeal in the publication PLOS Medicine. The researchers say stronger health systems and greater community involvement are needed in Nigeria, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. All three countries face attacks by militants, political unrest, and a lack of trust among the populations. Seye Abimbola works for Nigeria's National Primary Healthcare Development Agency. He says it is time to share responsibility for ending polio. He has written that the World Health Community goal to end polio appears to be binding it to lessons learned about health systems over the past 30 years. Dr. Abimbola says parents have reasonable concerns about the safety of vaccines. He also says some families may have lost children to diseases like pneumonia, malaria, and diarrhea. A mother, he says, may wonder what the government is doing about other diseases. Dr. Abimbola says polio immunization should be part of a larger health program. He also says it is important to deal with people who distrust polio vaccines as human beings with real concerns, not as opponents. He says it is important to show militant groups that health interventions are necessary. For example, aid agencies say there have been cases when even the Taliban in Afghanistan has supported immunization campaigns against polio. Seye Abimbola says the Afghan Taliban approves of action against polio. He says this is because when a militant group wants the trust of the people, they go at it by trying to do what the people want. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Some kinds of mental skills naturally decrease as people get older. Yet, research seems to show that some training can improve such skills. A recent study also appears to show that the good effects of training can last for many years after that training has ended. Researchers at Johns Hopkins University in Maryland wanted to learn how long memory and thinking skills would last in older people who trained to keep them. The people were part of a 10-year research project. They were taught methods meant to improve their memory, thinking, and ability to perform everyday tasks. More than 2,800 volunteered for the study, called ACTIVE, or Advanced Training for Independent and Vital Elderly. Most started the training when they were more than 70 years old. The volunteers took one of several classes meant to help them keep their mental abilities. One class learned skills including how to remember word lists. Another group was trained in reasoning. A third group received help with speed of processing, speed of receiving and understanding information. A fourth group, the control group, did not get any training. Earlier results had established that the training helped for up to 5 years. Lead researcher George Reebok now says the training continued to be effective a full 10 years later. The research team found that the people trained in reasoning and speed of processing did better on test than the control group. The effect on memory seemed not to last as long. Still, people who took part in any of the 3 classes generally reported fewer problems in daily activities than the control group. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carla Babb.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. We all know that exercise is good for your health. Some kinds of exercise, however, may be better than others. Running, for example, may help to protect against heart disease and other health problems. Running also may help you live longer. Researchers say it is not important how far you run. It also does not matter how fast or even how often you run. Recently, researchers studied more than 55,000 adults. About 1/4 of the adults reported running regularly. The study found these men and women were less likely than non-runners to die of any form of disease, including heart disease. In fact, the runners lived, on average, 3 years longer than the non-runners. This study lasted 15 years. During that time, more than 3,400 of the individuals died. About 1,200 of the deaths were linked to heart disease, a heart attack, or stroke. One of the researchers, D.C. Lee, is an assistant professor of kinesiology, or the science of movement, at Iowa State University. He says, compared to non-runners, people who run showed a much lower risk of dying from some diseases. D.C. Lee and the other researchers found that speed, distance, and how often one runs made little difference in reducing the risk of death. Mr. Lee says slower runners and those who only ran once or twice a week were helped nearly as much as those who ran faster and farther. To stay healthy, doctors suggest that adults up to age 65 perform 150 minutes of moderate exercise every week. They say these adults need 75 minutes of running and other vigorous exercise each week for good health. For VOA Learning English, I'm Jonathan Evans. From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Meningitis is spreading across West Africa. The brain disease is a threat every year across 21 African countries. Now, scientists have found they can predict and prepare for this and other diseases by using information from satellites. Every year, dust storms blow across the Sahel area of Africa, and meningitis crosses the area after the storms. Tens of thousands of people there get the disease each year. About 10% of them die from the disease. Another 10 to 20% suffer permanent brain or nerve damage. Carlos Perez Garcia Pandu is an atmospheric scientist with the American Space Agency, NASA. Mr. Garcia Pandu says scientists do not know why meningitis follows the seasonal dust storms. But he and his team watched the dust storms from the satellites. Then, by also using other pieces of information, the researchers found they could predict how bad the next meningitis season would be. Nita Barty is with Penn State University. She predicts the spread of measles by watching city lights grow brighter. The disease measles spreads in crowds. In Niger's capital, Niamey, the population grows in the dry season as farmers arrive, seeking work. Ms. Barty and her team found they could predict how measles would spread through Niamey by watching parts of the city light up on satellite pictures from the brightness of their lights and cooking fires. Rita Colwell works for the University of Maryland. Her group found it could predict cases of the deadly disease cholera in Bangladesh by using satellite information about conditions in the Bay of Bengal. For VOA Learning English, I'm Jonathan Evans.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. American researchers say contact with rhythm may help people with neurological diseases lead a better life. The researchers reported the finding after they carried out experiments with a famous rock and roll musician. Scientists say timing has a major influence on how the human brain works. And when the timing is off, so is the processing of information. The new study was the work of researchers at the University of California, San Francisco. They examined the brain of Mickey Hart. He is a former member of the rock group The Grateful Dead. For the study, he was asked to play electronic drums as part of a computer game. The experiments combined neuroscience with modern technology, gaming, and the virtual world. Mickey Hart wore sensor devices on his head as he played the drums. In another room, scientists watched how his brain reacted to the orderly beat or rhythm. They watched how his eyes moved. They measured changes in his blood flow and body temperature. All this information showed his brain's activity in real time. Mickey Hart is interested in knowing how his brain, what he calls the master clock, works. He has also been interested for years in the power of music. In the 1980s, he used music to connect with his grandmother who was suffering from Alzheimer's disease. She had not spoken in a year. When he played the drums, she spoke his name and started talking again. Scientists say their goal is to use rhythm training and even video games to improve brain function. They believe that when the brain operates correctly, people enjoy a better quality of life. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Autism spectrum disorder is a developmental disability. People with autism have trouble communicating and with social skills. They also might repeat some behaviors and not want change in their daily activities. Some people with the condition need a lot of help. U.S. government officials say autism affects 1 in every 68 children in the United States. But the number of cases appears to be growing. Common signs of autism include trouble making eye contact and a delay in learning how to speak. Some people with severe autism never learn how to talk. Doctors have learned how to recognize autism, but much is still unknown about its causes. Researchers at Harvard University have come closer to finding answers. They found that women exposed to the highest levels of a kind of air pollution are 2 times more likely to give birth to a child with autism. Mark Weisskopf led the Harvard researchers. They studied women who were in the later part of their pregnancies. In all, they examined medical records from all 50 U.S. states for about 116,000 mothers and their children. The study found that the women who were around high levels of fine particulate matter air pollution were at the highest risk of having an autistic child. They found the risk was only when the mother was pregnant, not before or after the child was born. Mark Weisskopf says this finding does not prove there is a direct link between pollution and autism. But he adds it has increased his team's belief that there is a relationship between the two. Autism is believed to result from a combination of environmental and genetic factors. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. The sound of a mosquito can mean trouble in many parts of the world, but the bite of a mosquito can sometimes kill. The flying insect can carry diseases like malaria. The World Health Organization estimates that almost 630,000 people died in 2012 from malaria and causes linked to the disease. Most of these deaths were in African countries south of the Sahara Desert. In the United States, scientists are seeking ways to fight malaria. The University of California, Riverside is working to develop a more effective and less costly product to protect people from mosquitoes. Scientists there are investigating the sense of smell in mosquitoes. They found the insects use the same receptor to identify carbon dioxide in human breath and to smell our skin. Ananda Sankar Ray is leading the investigation. He says scientists tested more than 1 million chemical compounds until they found a substance that blocks the mosquito's receptor. The substance is called ethyl pyruvate. He says they found that hungry mosquitoes showed no interest in attacking a human arm because only a few of them could smell it. Genevieve Tukes was a member of the research team. She says it was not easy to find the neurons or nerve cells that recognize both the smell of human breath and skin. The scientists use special instruments to identify the signals that a mosquito's neurons send to its brain when it finds an interesting smell. Ananda Sankar Ray says a product based on ethyl pyruvate may cost less than the most effective treatment now in use. That treatment, called DEET, is too costly for most people in areas affected by malaria. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.